Hey there! Today, we're diving into a topic that's really important but often misunderstood: the connection between substance use, gambling, and violent behavior, and how we can make positive changes. Don't worry, this isn't going to be a boring lecture. I'll break it down in a way that makes sense, and maybe, just maybe, we'll have a little fun along the way. Ready? Let's go. So, let's kick things off with something you might have seen or even experienced: the vicious cycle of alcohol, drugs, gambling, and violence. Picture this: someone's had a long, stressful day. They're feeling overwhelmed, so they decide to unwind with a few drinks. Nothing wrong with that, right? But soon those few drinks turn into way too many. Their mood shifts, their judgment gets clouded, and before you know it, an argument that could have been solved with a calm conversation escalates into something much worse. Sound familiar? That's how the cycle starts. Alcohol and drugs lower inhibitions and mess with our ability to think clearly. Gambling can trigger similar issues. Imagine someone losing a huge amount of money, feeling angry and helpless, and lashing out. It's not that alcohol, drugs, or gambling directly cause violence, but they definitely increase the chances of it happening. Here's where things get serious. According to the World Health Organization, around 55% of intimate partner violence incidents involve alcohol use. In cases of violent crime overall, substance use is a major factor, with approximately 40% of offenders under the influence of alcohol or drugs at the time of the offense. Gambling also comes with its risks. A study by the National Council on Problem Gambling found that problem gamblers are twice as likely to experience relationship issues, including domestic violence. Now you might be wondering, if someone stops drinking, using drugs, or gambling, will they automatically stop being violent? Unfortunately, it's not that simple. Stopping one problem doesn't magically solve the other. These are separate issues that need to be tackled individually. Think of it like this: if you have a leaking roof and a broken furnace, fixing the roof won't make your house warm. You've got to address both problems. But here's the good news: you can break the cycle. The first step is understanding how these behaviors are connected. Think of substance use, gambling, and violence as a tangled web. Each one can fuel the others in different ways. For example, alcohol might lower someone's inhibitions, making them more likely to react aggressively during an argument. Gambling losses might lead to financial stress, which can then trigger substance use as a coping mechanism. Over time, the stress and emotions caused by gambling or substance use can create a volatile environment where violence becomes a more likely outcome. Recognizing this connection is crucial because it helps us see that solving just one part of the problem won't fix everything. If someone only focuses on quitting drinking but doesn't deal with the underlying emotional triggers or stress from gambling, they're more likely to relapse or continue struggling with harmful behaviors. Addressing the entire web of issues, substance use, gambling, and emotional health, is what breaks the cycle for good. Speaking of which, let's talk about what those problems might look like. Alright, next up: use, abuse, and dependence. This is where things get interesting because not all substance use or gambling looks the same. Let's break it down. First, we've got use. This is when someone occasionally drinks, uses a substance, or gambles without any major consequences. Maybe they have a beer at a party or place a friendly bet on a sports game. No big deal, right? They can take it or leave it. The key here is that their behavior doesn't interfere with their life. They're not skipping work, neglecting responsibilities, or burning through their savings. It's all pretty casual. But then, there's abuse. Now things start to get messy. Picture this: someone drinks so much they black out, or they gamble away money they can't afford to lose. Maybe they're using substances more often than they'd like to admit, and it's starting to affect their relationships, their job, or their health. They might be saying, "I can stop anytime I want," but their actions are telling a different story. Here's an example. Let's call him Mike. Mike used to only drink on weekends, but now he finds himself reaching for a bottle after a stressful day at work. His friends have noticed he's more irritable, and he's had a couple of close calls driving home. Mike's not dependent yet, but he's definitely moved from use to abuse. Finally, we have dependence. This is when someone can't stop even if they want to. Their body and mind are hooked. They might experience withdrawal symptoms if they try to quit, things like anxiety, shakes, or even more severe reactions. Their life starts revolving around the substance or activity. They're either using, thinking about using, or recovering from using. Let's check back in with Mike. At this point, he's drinking every day. He feels like he can't get through a day without it. He's missing work, his relationships are falling apart, and his health is declining. He knows it's a problem, but stopping feels impossible. That's dependence. And here's the kicker, people don't always move in a straight line from use to abuse to dependence. They can go back and forth depending on what's happening in their life. Stress, trauma, or even just bad habits can push someone from use to abuse. The important thing is to recognize where you are on the spectrum and take steps to change before things get worse. Oh, and one more thing. It's not always easy to tell when someone has crossed the line from use to abuse or dependence. People can seem like they're functioning just fine on the surface, but underneath, they're struggling. That's why it's so important to be honest with yourself and seek help if you need it. According to the National Institute on Drug Abuse, about 20 million Americans over the age of 12 suffer from a substance use disorder, and less than 20% of them receive treatment. That's a huge gap. Recognizing the signs early can make all the difference. Alright, now let's talk about something that can really fuel substance use or gambling emotional triggers. Everyone has emotions, right? And sometimes those emotions can lead us to do things we wouldn't normally do. This is especially true when it comes to using substances or gambling. There are two types of emotional triggers, positive and negative. Let's start with the positive ones. Yeah, you heard that right. Even feeling good can trigger unhealthy behavior. Imagine someone just got a promotion at work. They're feeling on top of the world, so they decide to celebrate with a night out. One drink turns into 10, and suddenly, that celebration doesn't feel so great the next morning. Or maybe they hit a winning streak at the casino and that rush of excitement makes them keep going until they've lost more than they won. Now, let's look at negative triggers. This one's probably more familiar. Think about times when you felt stressed, angry, sad, or embarrassed. It's easy to reach for something that provides quick relief, whether it's a drink, a pill, or a bet. The problem is, that relief is temporary. When it wears off, the emotions are still there, and sometimes they're even worse than before. Here's a story to illustrate both types of triggers. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah had a tough day at work. Her boss was on her case and she's feeling stressed. She goes home, pours herself a drink to relax, and before she knows it, she's had too much. The next day, she feels guilty and promises herself she won't do it again. A week later, she gets some great news. Her best friend is getting married. She's so excited that she goes out to celebrate. One drink leads to another and well, you can guess the rest. The point is, whether you're feeling good or bad, emotions can be powerful triggers. Recognizing your emotional triggers is a huge step in breaking the cycle of unhealthy behavior. When you know what sets you off, you can start finding healthier ways to cope. Like talking to a friend, going for a walk, or even just taking a few deep breaths. Studies have shown that people who learn to manage their emotional triggers are significantly more likely to maintain long-term recovery. It's all about building resilience and finding healthier outlets for those emotions. Alright, we've covered a lot today. The cycle of substance use, gambling, and violence, the difference between use, abuse, and dependence, and how emotional triggers can fuel harmful behaviors. But what's next? How do you actually make a change and get help if you need it? First things first, remember that asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength. Whether you're dealing with substance use, gambling, or just trying to better manage your emotions, there are people and resources out there ready to support you. Here are a few options. Professional help. Therapists, counselors, and support groups can help you navigate the challenges of change. Organizations like Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, Narcotics Anonymous, NA, and Gamblers Anonymous, GA, offer peer support and guidance from people who have been through similar struggles. Hotlines. If you need immediate support, you can contact a hotline like the National Helpline for Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services at 1-800-662-HELP, 4357. It's free, confidential, and available 24/7. Local community resources. Many communities offer free or low-cost counseling services, addiction recovery programs, and family support groups. Check with local health departments or community centers. Online support. There are countless online forums, apps, and virtual meetings where you can connect with others facing similar issues. Sometimes just knowing you're not alone can make a huge difference. Making a change isn't about being perfect, it's about taking small, consistent steps in the right direction. Maybe today you recognize a trigger. Maybe tomorrow you reach out for help. Every step counts. And don't forget, you're not in this alone. There's a whole world of people who care and want to see you succeed. Thanks for sticking with me through this. Remember, it's okay to ask for help and it's okay to take things one step at a time. You've got this. So, to recap, alcohol, drugs, and gambling don't directly cause violence, but they can definitely make things worse. Use, abuse, and dependence are different stages on a spectrum, and it's important to recognize where you are and take action. And finally, emotions, both positive and negative, can trigger unhealthy behavior, so learning to manage those triggers is key.